Greetings to you all. Welcome to our 70-second video, dear friends.
Greetings, everyone.
Let's start reading. Life on Earth is a complete complex of motions and events. Mankind who is immersed and stuck within these events sometimes sees around opposite events, contradictions, and they assume them as disorder. However, this vision is wrong and a result of misinterpreting the events, especially because of the lack of knowledge about the causality principle. The ones who look at the world through the power of knowledge, which helps to connect the effects of the events to their causes, are soon to see that there is an immense harmony and an orderly sequencing in its every state, every event and every being, from its smallest particle to its whole. Orderly and devised occurrences of the bonds of causality put into effect the great universal harmony. So, in order to observe this harmony, it is necessary to think upon the relations of causality and cause between all the events which lend mankind the intuition that every motion and event are directly and indirectly interconnected through infinite bonds, and to try to see and hear something in this field. In order to ensure this thinking and vision, it is necessary to review the knowledge we previously gave, that nothing is without a reason in the universe, and everything concludes. There, we have given sufficient knowledge about the causality principle. The ones who follow this principle as they examine life on Earth can see many events and states of occurrences which are interconnected as one concludes another and another causes the other, within a successive and harmonious flux. Devices, schemes and actions which advance towards great purposes within this flux make mankind feel intensely the existence of a great harmony in the universe. Let's pause here and discuss because this is a very long passage.
First of all, let me underline the importance of the procedure stated in this passage, connecting effects of the events to their causes. We read here the importance of these steps: observation, assessment and decision. First step is observation, observing the motions and activities in nature, and please don't think only trees, bugs and birds when you hear the word nature, because, including us, everything that exists is nature in its simplest meaning. So, we need to be able to observe the motions and activity within nature, and to be able to assess the connections among these, and in order to make such assessments we need information, we need data. I mean, a human being cannot assess things just by thinking. Gradually a person needs to understand main principles belonging to nature, and also, needs to make efforts for becoming able to assess and question things. Yes, there must be a wish, a willingness to assess and question things. Only after all these factors come together, we gradually begin to analyze an event, a thing. And if we cannot observe things properly, or because of the insufficiency of our information, then the decision we make about things, that is, connecting the result to its cause, turns out to be wrong. Nevertheless, we are human beings and only we are given the responsibility of applying this procedure. That is, this is one of the determining factors in our developmental process, so, we have to do this. And we can make mistakes, no problem in making mistakes, but, we are expected to learn lessons from the mistakes we made and to acquire new and more encompassing principles for gradually passing into a phase of living a life with less mistakes, of making more and more correct decisions, and of gaining more robust experiences in life. So, yes, when we talk about connecting the effects of the events to their causes, we need to mention these factors first. As you understand, everything is information, everything is knowledge. Yet, I am not talking about learning everything about a subject but neglecting other fields of life, like some academics do. No, instead of storing knowledge like a hard disk, we need to gain the habit of activating the mechanisms of deep thinking after acquiring some certain main principles. In that sense, we don't need anybody else for making decisions. After gaining the main information we must decide about events and things by ourselves, and of course, we must make mistakes first, and we will live the consequences of those mistakes. No problem, because, only after that we will begin to learn making correct decisions, gradually. On that path leading to the rights there will always be small pebbles that cut the ground from under our feet. On the following paragraphs we will revisit this topic, as we read about the chain reaction. Now, the book started with a bird egg and later it will explain the whole process of evolution. Yet, here, after getting out of the automatisms of the plant and animal stages and hence, having been completing these stages, in this point of human beings' development, we are in a state of getting out of our own automatisms by gradual questioning and assessing events, and reaching to a higher state of connecting the effects or results of the life events to their causes. And only after that state, we can begin the phase of mastering the world matter, or hydrogen cosmos matter. This applies to all of us.
As we read at that part of this passage, our lack of knowledge about the causality principle affects how we perceive our life. Yes, there is a mechanism of cause and effect. At the superficial time comprehension of this world, at this linear time perception we have, we always encounter the effects of the events, but we remain clueless or unaware about the causes of those events, and then we say why such things happen to us? Because we cannot see the causal plane that event occurred at. This vantage point only belongs to our essence being, because our essence being designs each life event with the assistance of the beings in duty by reviewing all the accumulated experiences and shortcomings, and then, we encounter those life events that will bring lessons for our further learning and opportunities for fulfilling our shortcomings. In this sense, from that vantage point, all alternative paths and possibilities are easily visible, but at our ground level, that is, at the superficial time perception we are born into, until we reach that state you mentioned, we need to pass through some phases and stages of development. Obtaining a sense of self-personality lasts until 24 years of age. Our brains cannot deal with abstract concepts until we are 16 years old. First 25 years of an average lifetime of 70 years are spent to establish a ground. And within this limited time span, we can learn only by making mistakes first. This process is expressed in that adage, what you reap is what you sow. This is why ancient teachings warn us about sowing seeds on infertile fields, and in order to discern which field is fertile and which field is not, we need the value differentiation and the knowledge of observation and comparison. We need to experience first sowing our seeds in an infertile soil and becoming famished when we cannot have a harvest. Then we learn the composition of the soil, preparing the field and timing of the sowing, etc. Therefore, the knowledge we gain from the first-hand experiences are so precious. And what we complain most about is the most suitable setting for us to practice active patience. The hustle and bustle of the big cities. There are always events that keep us on our toes. We always need to be aware, need to be awake, need to be vigilant. It is a constant bombardment of influences. When we look at the situation from the perspective of our beings and their needs, then we can understand why millions and even billions of people converge on big cities. The intensity and frequency of the events that happen per unit of time and space is so great that the life on those big cities provide the beings innumerable possibilities to complete the lessons that remained unfinished, either from the past lifetimes or the current one, and all beings are making efforts to complete the human stage before the end of this world cycle. Some of us do this automatically, some do this semi-comprehendingly, or at best intentionally. Let's continue reading this passage. Take a small bird egg, for instance. Taken by itself, this simple bird egg has innumerable ordered and devised states, which are connected to each other by immense results. Let us trace the life of the egg, which is connected to this great harmony. In time, a hatchling is made out of this egg. In order for this hatchling to develop, it has to be kept at a certain degree of warmth for a while. For this, some influences are sent to the female bird from above, from a plan which is engaged with this deed. This bird has some instincts under these influences. As a result of these instincts, she patiently sits on the egg for a while. She ensures the seed in the egg grows up to be a hatchling by her body warmth. The order and sequencing governing a few links of the chain of cause and effect we listed so far are obvious. this is the expression of a great harmony. To disregard or underestimate the hatchling, which is just out of the egg and not even a drop in the immense universe, is very wrong. It should be remembered that this hatchling is a part of the universe as well, and for it to live and grow up, the parts of universe assigned to its lot work continuously. Nevertheless, the hatchling is still a simple, inexperienced beginner. It does not know how to eat or fly. It does not recognize its enemies. It does not see the dangers. It cannot determine from where or how it will obtain its food. Therefore, as a newcomer to the world, if it is left alone, it cannot live and it dies. However, it needs to live and do some deeds. Because of this, someone is needed to teach and make it to do these deeds, and this someone will be the female bird which helped it to come to the world. However, this female bird cannot think of this and appreciate this need of her hatchling. Then, the intervention of the beings in duty in the evolutionary order starts, and such influences are sent to her that because of the instincts put into effect by those influences, the female bird cannot but feed and teach her hatchlings, and this time even sometimes putting her life on the line until they can take care of themselves. The hatchling needs to live, and for this, influences are needed to be sent to the female bird from above. For, that hatchling has come into the world to fulfill the developmental need of its being in the state of a bird in the world, and by this means it will render all necessities of the bird body, and gain all of its refining experiences, within an automatic mechanism, and be a vehicle for the applications of some other beings around it through its relations with them. The necessary devices for all these deeds will be established with the assistance of the beings in duty, and so, the bird will give and take whatever it needs to give and take to and from the world.
I'd like to explain something. Despite the fact that we use the word automatisms to describe the processes the beings go through at the plant and animal stages of development, this is not the case at all. I mean, this state is not like the automatic behavior of a robot that is made up of mechanical bolts, screws and gears. This is an ever-learning and ever-advancing phase of development that utilizes the method of automatism, either as a preference or due to the governing principles of the universe. We will read about the mother bird, her hatchlings, but all of us know that scene. After all, mother bird comes to the nest and all hatchlings open their beaks and try to be the first one that gets the food from the mother's mouth. They don't have a because or due to this or that, because they don't deal with the causes and effects. That's why we call this phase of learning as automatism. It is instinctual. All those automatic and instinctual behaviors occur through the influences sent to that bird body by its being, that, in turn, receives influences from its guiding beings, the beings in duty with the task of the development of that bird. And the spirit of that bird adds the process traces of those experiences of the bird body and the bird being to its acquisition of knowledge from the matter universe. Now, I'd like to repeat that the behavior of a baby bird is not like the automatic behaviors of a robot or automaton. It is obvious at the differences in eating capacities of other hatchlings, second, third, fourth baby bird, etc. The food is not distributed in equal portions. One eats more, the other eats less, another is pushed aside and falls down the nest, etc. All appearances of nature. And the mother does not automatically fly off to find and bring food. The mechanism of influencing is used to make the mother bird do this. And in the meantime, the being of the mother bird begins to experience those tasks and at the same time, to learn, let's say, about the altruism, even though in an automatic manner. Just as the ants and the bees learn the collaboration and coordination, that mother bird's learning begins from these initial steps of altruism. Years ago, in our family farm, we had a hen that terrorized all of us whenever she had chicks. We couldn't get near to the area she kept her chicks. She was directly attacking to the eyes of anyone dared to get nearby. Not only humans, but the dogs and cats were cautious around that area of the garden. Yet, we were letting that hen to live and have more chicks because she was so overprotective that all of her chicks were surviving. While other hens, more docile or easygoing, were not like this ferocious chicken, and sometimes, they were letting their chick go unprotected and die. And those hens are quick to be culled because their motherly instincts are not strong and their chicks tend to be underfed and small. In other words, that mother hen gets eliminated and the hen that has strong motherly instincts survive. But please understand that the beings of all those chickens are different, and at different levels of development, hence, they learn to deal with different influences, but in an automatic manner. I mean, no one expects such a hen to make a connection between cause and effect by saying, when I am not a good mother, humans cull me, wish I could take better care of those chicks. Because that being's body becomes eliminated within the general automatism of nature, in the next body, the being will try to change ways of behavior in order to survive longer. But it may not change its ways, as well. So, it is not to be like a robot, an automation, the being has the chance of choosing.
We see that the being, as it gets developed at every level and stage, it tests its knowledge on matter, and sometimes it can properly send influences to the body, but sometimes it cannot do this properly. I mean, just consider the overprotective hen you gave as an example. The being of this chicken tries to shape its behaviors and to keep it alive by sending influences, but maybe the influence pertaining the protection of chicks was imbalanced, there is some maladjustment. Then, in the next body, the being tries to adjust its influences accordingly to ensure a longer lifespan. And who knows, maybe later this new adjustment becomes more encompassing. I mean, the hen begins to protect not only her chicks but also some ducklings that have no mother duck to take care. So the being gets developed towards a different level of compassion that does not discriminate between breeds and species. Of course, such progress does not happen at once. There is a law of gradualness. The development and evolution of the being does not happen suddenly. We don't jump from one reality to a higher one. The beings always try and make efforts in each incarnation. Yes, the more the being gets experienced in adjusting its influences, faster the being completes phases and stages, but it cannot skip the levels or stages. I hear some of my friends that are interested in spiritual topics saying, I don't want to be born again. I don't want to live in this world one more time or similar sentences. Yet, we simply forget how huge the efforts are being spent in building this current body of ours. Just consider the complex arrangements and adjustments that are involved in genetic suitability, ancestral materials, the sequence of events that will contain lessons at every possible level to fulfill the needs of the being without any conflict and contradiction. And, against such a magnificent system we say, life is so hard, let it be my last incarnation on earth. Yes, we have such wrong approaches toward life. However, there are many beings waiting to be born into this world school, and there are even some beings that try to finish this school without attending. Also, there are disembodied beings that are still focusing their influences on this world. Therefore, we need to acknowledge and appreciate the value of our bodily life, of each breath we take on this world, so we can utilize the possibilities offered by this lifetime up to the maximum level. And how do we do this? By getting more and more impressions, because we are creatures that advance and progress by impressions. Just like the bird eggs in the nest, they are warmed by the mother bird that sits on her eggs, and the being governing. That mother bird needs to adjust the influences it sends to this bird body in accordance with the impressions the mother bird receives all the time. Fluctuations in the weather and the atmosphere, her vigilance regarding the predators, etc., because, at the same time, the beings of a mouse or a snake body have to gain impressions. In short, life is a struggle and advances by the being swinging from one pole to another, in the opposite sides of the developmentary mechanism the system utilizes to ever develop itself. Yes, let's continue reading. After all of these have happened, it is now necessary for it to leave the bird body. For, it now has started to feel the need of reaching the possibility of further development. In order to ensure this possibility, a new device is needed. Those beings in duty render this device as well. Among the various vehicles which will remove this bird from the world when it needs to leave the world in order to enter another body, they turn to the most suitable one, which is as well for the evolutionary harmony of other beings. For example, a cat which needs to live, but cannot find food for days and is hungry, will benefit from this event, and is well suited to the device mechanism above. Therefore, beings in duty start to descend into that hungry cat and lead it to activities towards the eating of that bird. By this means, the cat will both feed itself and develop the capabilities it needs. The same influences also descend to the bird which needs to leave the world now, and drags the bird to the exact place of the cat. Under this influence, the bird cannot see the cat and directly lands where the cat may easily reach it. The cat catches the bird and eats it. Now, the flux of the event has forked into another branch, that is, into another being's plan as well. However, let us leave it aside and continue with the end of the bird. We have taken only a few of the life events the bird has gone through from going out of the egg until it dies, and we have shown their cause and effect bonds and devices which advance towards certain purposes in a perfect order. And other than this, it can have many other direct or indirect relations with plants, animals, and even humans in its particular communal plan. All of these continue, without violating even a hair's breadth, the frame of the general developmental harmony. Among them, besides the states which seem good, there are also apparently bad, disruptive, disordered states, such as upon landing on the ground to feed, the poor bird is abruptly eaten by a monstrous cat, but after the knowledge above, what is observed here is not the disharmony but, quite the contrary, the most perfect mechanism of harmony and order. Thus by this device, this bird will now come to the world in another body, which is superior and suitable for development. Now that being, after it left the world through the devices we mentioned above, in order to come into the world in another animal body which has more abundant possibilities, again, everything, parents, educators, environs, climate conditions, helpers, etc., are prepared for it. Whatever is needed for the development of that being, they are put into effect by the being in duty to it, within various devices and arrangements. Arrangements and devices are adjusted to each other, in order to determine and assign its various relations with other beings, both from its own species and outside of its species who will enter the communal plan, which is automatic of that being. For instance, if it is to be a dog, among the devices preparing the developmental possibilities in dog life, a man who needs to die by rabies is ensured to own that dog. All of these occur within the harmony of the great order which conducts the general evolution in the world.
The passage sounds like it explains something very simple. The progress is explained in such a simple way that readers may think that we already know this. However, this is the way of understanding our seemingly ordinary, everyday events in ever finer details by combining these with the higher knowledge. An event we deem as simple may give us myriad knowledge about the connections with causes and its effects. For example, in my childhood, I had a very bad experience with a baby bird and a cat. I had found a baby bird on the grass, it couldn't fly. I took it to home and at the balcony I tried to clean its wings and help it to fly. Suddenly it tried to fly, got out of my hands but it couldn't open its wings and fell down the ground. And a cat was walking by and when saw the baby bird on the ground, it took it into its mouth. And I saw the baby bird's wings sticking out from that cat's mouth, and that was a traumatic impression on me. And as I tried to run down the stairs to save the bird from the cat, my mother shouted from my behind, "Couldn't you keep the bird safe?" And my trauma was doubled. Now, even if I didn't see that bird on the grass, that cat would walk by and took it, anyway. Yet, in that moment, three different beings were in exchange of higher energies, a bird, a cat and a human child. That cat would surely hunt that bird, but a human should be there, somehow involved to get whatever influence is his or her due. And just as we read in this passage, a chain reaction happens. And moreover, as I study this book, I read this example about the baby bird and the cat in the book, I remember that memory. Just consider the combined impression of that memory and reading this example over my mind. I mean, these seemingly simple sentences evoke such a higher knowledge, such a higher influence within me. If no one benefited from this example in this book, I did. For the curious friends, let me say that yes, there were times I saved other birds, and after a brief period of aversion from cats, now we have a cat in our home. Yes, these events in life are like a chain reaction, just like a nuclear bomb. The chain reaction within a nuclear bomb begins with a very simple action, but the result is way more complex. Events are like this, so, there is not a simple event. Each and every event that happens to us is indeed complex and profound. And we can get lessons, information and knowledge from those events to the degree our consciousness, knowledge and observation allow us. So, it may be beneficial for all of us to see life events from this perspective.
In the final analysis, each being works hard to continue its existence, to survive, and to ensure this, they need to gain the ability of agility, limberness. Can we ask a lion why it hunts a gazelle? Of course we cannot ask a cat not to hunt a bird either. It is their nature. And the natural balance always gets restored. For example, when the population of snakes decreases due to over-extermination, then the rat population increases. We cannot cancel one part of the natural equation. The system entails both of them to coexist, in balance. Interestingly, when we humans stop meddling with this balance, when we let nature be, this system continues perfectly. And you said something about the survival of the fittest. This continuity is needed for the further development of the being, in bodies that get ever complex at each developmentary stage.
Previously, Darwin's theory of evolution was summarized as the survival of the fittest, but now, it is summarized as the survival of the most adapted to their environment. Not the strongest, but the most adapted. And this is one of the most frequently explained topics in this book. The beings, by the various bodies they built out of the cruder matter combinations, learn adapting to nature, starting from the simplest bodies, like primitive cells at each stage, plant, animal, and human. Development of the beings is all about adapting to nature.
Our dear friends ask questions about the reasons behind the atrocities done to animals, or maltreatment of animals, etc., because recently, there is many news on social media about animals slaughtered, tortured or poisoned, etc. You said that when you saw the wings of the bird you tried to keep alive at the mouth of that cat, you were shocked. So, this was a shocking life event for you. It opened a door for you to a higher level of conscience, at that early age. Now, almost 8 billion people living on this world need such shocking events for the slight conscientious motions in their individual life to become strong impulses of conscience so they can act more and more conscientiously. For the beings of animals tortured and poisoned we hear about in the news, those deaths are like a kind of self-sacrifice for invoking pangs of conscience, or strong emotions in people that can turn into actions for betterment of the animal rights, etc. In that sense, the beings of those animals are advancing on their path of development. Traumas those animals endured are never in vain. The conscientious reactions of the observers and witnesses to such heinous acts are the important result, because their deaths or what they endure play a very important role in wearing off the thick blinders covering the inner eyes of humankind, preventing human beings from seeing the reality as it is. So, that thick blinders can be worn off only by going through such shocking life events. And a person that kills, tortures, or mauls an animal also has to encounter the consequences of those deeds, if not in the current lifetime, certainly in other incarnations. Today's deeds will be causes of the effects of future events. Of course, we are not aware of the developmentary levels of such persons, and which are the developmentary needs of the beings of such persons. In the human stage, there are innumerable levels of development, mostly still instinctual and automatic. Yes. Let's continue reading. It is time for the dog to go, it will die. In accordance with the plan, he gets rabies. In the meantime, the man who is its owner has completed his deeds in the world, and becomes ready to leave the world in order to continue his development in new bodies. Again, in accordance with the device and plan, the rabid dog will bite him, he will become rabid, and so both will die. All of these are interconnected devices which advance in great harmony. As it is seen, that beings advance in life which is apparently defective, and at opposite sides of each other at first in its relations with the environ, in its simple life as an egg, then the stories of the cat and the bird's life, and later the man and the dog's life, actually follow an ordered advance, which is suitable to the harmony of general evolution and development. And this advance has caused an adult bird to gain the initial instincts belonging to the duty of motherhood, and has ensured that a cat lives on through the body of the bird and develops some capabilities. It has caused a man to get rabies through the body of the dog, and consequently caused some results to occur in his individual and communal plan. All of these are for the occurrence of the most necessary states these beings have needed for their evolutions. So this situation is the manifestation of a small part of the great harmony, which belongs to the world. Although apparently contradictory to each other, these devices which are made to advance towards a single purpose are actually of the necessities of the great evolutionary order, and consequently of the universal harmony. We have taken that being when it was a simple egg. Then, after it has established infinite relations and bonds in such innumerable bodies with other innumerable beings, and after it has increasingly expanded the scope of its field of connection, finally, one day, it has elevated into a human body and acquired the power and ability to use it. Until that moment comes, it has created billions of events in the universe through its billions of relations with its environment, and the exact, unfailing interconnectedness of these events puts into effect the most vivid observation of the ordered devices of this harmony. In the communal plans which a man will establish with its environment, family, friends, other people, society, nation, and eventually directly or indirectly with the whole mankind, there will be uncountable relations and bonds influencing him, and these bonds and relations which will continue influencing throughout all the lives of his humanness will bring about consequences within innumerable devices and combinations which concern the whole mankind and even the universe, and his next life which is now universal will continue on towards the unitary in complete reconciliation with the devices and order of the universal harmony. Here we have shown that on the path of a simple bird egg which it will traverse until it becomes a universal being, there will be its communal plan, which is connected to its individual plans, relations of that communal plan with the other communal plans. Within direct or indirect devices and orders, there will be various environmental and natural conditions, which are suitable to the necessities of all these individual and communal plans. These plans will be regulated by these conditions. A great number of beings in duty at very different degrees, some completely automatic, some semi-comprehending and some with complete comprehension, will take on duties and work in these regulations, ordering and adapting, and above them, the beings of the higher and superior plan of duty will conduct them under their directives and controls as administrators, in accordance with the directives of necessities they receive from the unitary, and eventually, a day will come when that simple egg will become a powerful being who has taken a role like others in the administrative mechanism of the great plan of duty. Here, the force which sees that this simple bird egg will become a great being in duty in the far future, and which can regulate and determine the necessary preliminaries to ensure this higher state of it while it is still a simple egg, originates from this great harmony. That is, determining the initial preparations of a being's future states, which will occur after billions and billions of years, and executing these preparations towards their goal without digressing even a hair's breadth, is only possible by the force of a great harmony. It is now clear that all these activities occur within the great harmony of the divine order, which intends evolution in the universe, and connects the universe into a single occurrence with all of its events. And despite their generally negative appearances on the face of the one-sided and barren comprehension of human beings, this order flows onwards within a complete and unswerving harmony.
Until the disclosure of this book, the meaning of the word harmony has not been much significant in our daily life, yet after reading and rereading this book, the word harmony started to express a much deeper meaning. Even in our meditations, we express this deeper meaning by descriptions like synchronization or adaptation. When we see everything as nature, not only birds, bees and flowers but all movements and actions in the astronomical realm, in the whole hydrogen cosmos as nature, then the meaning of that harmony is to become itself of the principles. Please notice that at this point we talk about a very abstract state. The state of becoming itself of the principles, of the laws is actually the state of ability to become a being in duty. In other words, the state of becoming of that harmony is the ever-deepening adaptation to the principles of the entire matter universe up to the given level of development, and consequently, it means that to bring the universe out, to exist as intended by those principles. Yes, my words are abstract, it is hard to talk about such matters.
A few days ago I was outside, walking, surrounded by a beach and trees, very old trees. Suddenly, I felt like I was at an auditorium, full to the brim not with trees, plants, shrubs and seabirds and fishes but packed with my fellow beings that progress on the path of becoming of that harmony, by gradually but surely widening their capacity of comprehension. Trees and forests are the best examples of natural harmony. They have a communication network under the topsoil by the assistance of the mycelium. Those beings have the potential of reaching the animal stage, then reaching the human stage, and after completing the hydrogen cosmos, of passing to the plan of love, and after the completion of this semi-subtle realm, of passing to the plan of duty, and as becoming more and more of that harmony, eventually of reaching the unitary. Then, our way of seeing nature changes. We become more conscious about all creatures, plants and animals. Even as you break a branch or plucking a weed, you begin to remember the existence of another system of influence, working hard to let it survive, grow and mature as intended. And when we begin to become more conscious about the fact that all of us, all beings progress together, and when we are in harmony and balance, we strengthen our interconnection and widen our network, then we have the sweet taste of that harmony, and we begin to work for more of that taste. Yes, this world is not an easy place to be. There are physical suffering, emotional suffering, mental suffering within each lifetime of each being. Yet, we know that the beings learn by opposites, by learning from the absence of either side of their inherent duality unit. We swing from one end of the pendulum to the other end, and as we gradually learn our life lessons at either side of the conscience mechanism, we progress. And only when that swinging comes at rest in the neutral point of the equilibrium, then the beings can go up one reality higher. While we swing from one extreme to other, we cannot complete a reality, because we are either this or that extreme, in varying degrees. Only when the being gains the knowledge of the both opposites, valances and integrates it, then we have the chance of getting closer to that harmony. So, as it applies to anything, the rationality is important. Most of you ask about animals, your pets, etc. Of course, you can love animals, your pets, cats or dogs. You can act conscientiously toward them. You can establish a support group, sanctuaries, societies. You can work for more awareness about animal rights, etc. Yet, if a person takes care more than 40 and 50 cats in an apartment or a house by saying, "I love animals, I trust animals, I don't like other humans, I don't trust them," etc., then this approach may put a distance between that person and other persons in the community. That's an extreme, hence, irrational, imbalanced. Therefore, it is advisable to deal with such topics like animal rights, loving and caring pets by rational, conscious actions and choices, rather than the emotional ones. And some of our dear friends ask about the power animals, asking that if our power animals point to the animal bodies are being used while we are in the animal stage. No, they don't. What we name as power animals are actually archetypal concepts expressing the forces of life we observe in the outer world but symbolically keep in our inner world. If your power animal, let's say, an owl, this does not mean that you had been an owl in your previous developmentary stage, or you're being governed an owl body. And because we talk about symbolic representations of life forces, these tend to change or multiply in time. So, Please understand that power animals are the symbolic expressions of our various sides we identify with some natural forces. And I see some comments in the chat box, comparing animals, arguing about the superiority of some pets to others, etc. Actually, in the sense of our worldly minds posit, on the contrary, there is no inferiority or superiority among beings. Each animal, family or species has a different characteristic or trait as a contribution and the proof of the magnificent diversity of nature. Let's say, dolphins have an immense network for communication and hunting strategies. Ant colonies have an immense group coordination and collaboration. Who knows, maybe the being of a single honeybee does the application, albeit in a very simple version, of a stage for governing a whole universe as the part of a cadre of the beings in duty. Or more correctly, a seemingly simple application that will be extremely useful at the plan of duty. Because of this fact, we cannot ascribe superiority to some animals, just as we cannot to human beings. If our dear friends can read this book or watch our previous videos from the beginning, they will find answers to their such and similar questions. As you mentioned, this passage explains the whole progress in a very simple way. Yes, the system is simple, but our minds want to make it more complicated by ascribing too many meanings to its parts and pieces. Truths are simple. Yes, with these words, let me wish you all a good evening. Hoping to see you next week.
Good evening, everyone.